The ground beneath my feet trembled before I heard the sound. A deep crack split the evening air like thunder ripping through silence. My coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the porch steps. Windows in every house on the street rattled in their frames. Car alarms screamed to life one after another, creating a chorus of panic. Then came the smoke. Black and thick it poured from Karen, Whitmore's pristine white, chimney twisting into the sky like a demon. Released from captivity, I stood frozen watching as neighbors burst from their homes, eyes wide with fear. Karen stumbled into her driveway, screaming words I could not make out over the chaos. Her hair was singed on one side. Her face was covered in ash. She kept pointing at her house, then at me, then back at her house. I knew what had happened. Deep in my bones, I knew. For weeks, she had been stealing from me, creeping into my yard under cover of darkness, taking what was mine as if she owned everything in this neighborhood. The firewood I split with my own hands. The logs I stacked carefully behind my shed. Gone, piece by piece, night after night. She thought I would never notice. She thought she was untouchable. But I am a mechanical engineer. I see the world in systems and consequences. And I had set something in motion that could not be undone. This is not a story about firewood. This is a story about power and what happens when someone pushes too far. This is about a neighborhood held hostage by fear and one man who decided enough was enough. Before we go deeper into what happened, let me take you back. Back to when life in Maple Ridge Estates was quiet. Too quiet. Back to when I thought moving here after my wife died would bring me peace. I was so wrong. This place looked like a dream. White picket fences, lawns cut to exact specifications, neighbors who smiled when you passed them on the sidewalk. But underneath that perfect surface, something rotten was growing. And her name was growing. And her name was Karen. 8 years ago, I arrived in Maple Ridge with nothing but grief and a need for silence. My wife had been gone 6 months. Cancer took her slowly, and I watched every moment of it. When she finally passed, I could not stay in our old house. Every room held her voice. Every corner held a memory that cut like glass. So I sold everything and bought a small place here. A fresh start. A place where rules would keep life simple and predictable. I was a fool. I worked from home as a freelance mechanical engineer. Designed projects for factories, CAD models, stress analysis. Work that kept my mind busy and my hands occupied. My backyard became my sanctuary. I built a small workshop. I installed a smoker for weekend brisket. I stacked firewood every autumn because splitting logs gave me something honest to do, something real. Most neighbors left me alone. The Millers next door brought me pumpkin pie every Thanksgiving without fail. Old Mr. Jenkins waved every morning while watering his roses at exactly 7:15. It was peaceful. Then she moved in. Karen Whitmore arrived like a storm no one predicted. Mid-50s, blonde hair always styled like she was heading to a business meeting. Clothes pressed sharp enough to cut. She walked her tiny dog every morning at 8, carrying herself like royalty inspecting her kingdom. Within a month, she became HOA president. No one remembered an election. No one remembered voting. But suddenly there she was. Clipboard in hand, camera around her neck, authority dripping from every word. Karen loved 3 things: power, attention, and the belief that she alone could save this neighborhood from decline. She patrolled the streets like a soldier on duty, measuring grass height with an actual ruler, photographing mailboxes that were half an inch off center, sending violation letters for paint colors that were not pre-approved. People were terrified of her. I watched neighbors scramble to fix imaginary problems just to avoid her wrath. I watched grown men repaint their shutters because Karen decided the shade was 3% too dark. It was madness, but I kept my head down. I followed the rules. I paid my dues early. I thought if I stayed invisible, she would leave me alone. I was wrong about that, too. The first time Karen knocked on my door, I was working on a design for a conveyor system. I heard the sharp rap of knuckles on wood and opened it to find her standing there with a smile that did not reach her eyes. She held a printed letter. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "your woodpile violates community aesthetic standards. It is visible from the street." I stared at her. "Karen, the wood is behind my shed. You cannot see it unless you walk into my yard." She tilted her head like a teacher correcting a stubborn child. "From certain angles, it disrupts the neighborhood's symmetry." I almost laughed. Symmetry. "Karen, it is firewood, not an art installation." Her smile tightened into something cold. "You will need to relocate it within 10 days, or the HOA will issue a fine." Then she turned and walked away. No discussion. No compromise. Just orders delivered like a judge passing sentence. I did not move the wood. I stacked it neater. I made sure it was completely hidden behind the fence. That should have been the end. But with Karen, nothing ever ends. She does not stop. She does not forget. When she feels ignored, she escalates, and I was about to learn just how far she was willing to go. A week later, I came home from the grocery store and something felt wrong. I could not place it at first. Just a nagging sensation in the back of my mind. Then I looked at my wood pile and my chest tightened. It was smaller. I counted the logs. I always count. I am an engineer. Details matter. 20 pieces were missing. I stood there staring at the empty space trying to make sense of it. Maybe the landscapers took some by mistake. Maybe a neighbor borrowed a few during the cold snap last week. I did not lock my gate. This was supposed to be a safe community. I let it go. 2 days later, more wood was gone. Then again. Always at night. Always the same amount. 12 to 15 logs at a time. I started asking around. Casual questions. Friendly tone. Hey, anyone seen someone near my wood pile? Mr. Jenkins shrugged. Probably kids. You know how they are. But no kid was hauling 40-pound oak logs through the dark. I knew someone was stealing from me. I knew it was deliberate. But I had no proof. So I did what engineers do. I set a trap. I carved small notches into the ends of each log. Tiny marks invisible unless you knew where to look. A craftsman's signature. If any went missing, I would know exactly which ones. Then I installed a motion sensor light near the shed. Subtle, angled just right. That night I waited. At 11:30, the light flicked on. I rushed to the window, but only caught a shadow slipping through the gate. Something metallic glinted in the moonlight. Heels. I heard the click of heels on pavement. The next morning, 4 of my marked logs were gone. The grass near the gate was flattened by narrow prints. High heels. In this neighborhood, only one woman walked around in heels at all hours. But I was not ready to accuse anyone without proof. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. Then the next day, I received another letter from the HOA. Dear Mr. Thompson, your outdoor wood storage continues to violate Section 3 of the HOA Code regarding fire hazards and visual appeal. If not remedied, further disciplinary action will be considered. President Karen Whitmore. I read it 3 times. She was fining me for the same wood she was stealing. The audacity of it hit me like a punch. I called the number on the letterhead. No answer. So I drove past her house that afternoon. Slowly, carefully, and there through. Her large front window, I saw it, my firewood. The same notches I had carved, stacked neatly beside her fireplace. I sat in my truck staring. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. She was burning my wood while threatening me for having it. At that moment, I could have stormed over. I could have pounded on her door and demanded she stop. But I have learned something about people like Karen. Confrontation feeds them. Drama gives them power. If you shout, they win. So instead, I drove home. I sat in my workshop, and I started to plan. Because if Karen wanted my firewood, she could have it. But this time, it would come with a lesson she would never forget. I did not sleep that night. My mind raced with possibilities, calculations, designs, the kind of thinking that used to excite me when I was younger. When engineering was about solving problems, not surviving HOA tyranny. But this was a problem worth solving. I pulled out my old sketch pad, the one I had not touched since my wife got sick. I flipped past drawings of machinery and old projects until I found a blank page. At the top, I wrote the firewood project. It sounded almost professional, like a code name for a mission. I suppose it was. Here was my plan. I would create hollow logs, realistic on the outside, empty on the inside. Then I would fill them with small amounts of black powder, not enough to cause real danger, just enough to create a loud pop and a cloud of smoke when burned. Fireworks material. Harmless but dramatic. It took me 2 days to build them. I used my lathe to hollow out the cores of 3 large oak logs, carefully, precisely. Then, I filled the cavities with measured amounts of powder and sealed the ends with bark pieces. When I was done, they looked identical to every other log in the pile. I brushed them with ash to dull the color. I stacked them right in the middle where they would blend in perfectly. Each one was a masterpiece of petty engineering, a ticking time bomb of karma. But before I could set my trap, I needed absolute proof that Karen was the thief. Suspicion was not enough. I needed evidence so clear that no one could deny it. So I bought 2 small security cameras, night vision, cloud backup, motion detection. I mounted one above the shed angled toward the wood pile. The other I hid in the gutter overlooking the gate. They were invisible unless you knew where to look. Then I waited. The first 2 nights nothing happened. Just raccoons and a stray cat wandering through the frame. But on the 3rd night at 12:14 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app, and there she was. Karen Whitmore stood in my backyard, coat buttoned, scarf wrapped tight, flashlight in one hand. She moved with confidence like she had done this 100 times before, like my property was hers to do with as she pleased. I watched her on the screen. My jaw clenched, my pulse hammered in my ears. She stacked my logs into a neat pile beside her, counting them, arranging them. Then she whispered something to herself. The microphone barely caught it. He will not miss it. It is for the community anyway. For the community. I almost threw my phone across the room. She loaded the logs into the back of her SUV, closed the hatch, brushed her hands together like she had just finished a good deed. Then she walked away, calm, satisfied, completely, unaware that every second had been recorded. The next morning I watched the footage again, frame by frame. I zoomed in on her face. Clear as day, smug expression, perfect evidence. A normal person would have gone to the police or the HOA board, but I was not dealing with a normal situation. I was dealing with Karen, queen of loopholes, master of manipulation. If I accused her outright, she would twist the story. She would claim I was harassing her. She would bury me in paperwork and legal threats until I gave up. So I decided to let her destroy herself. That afternoon, there was a community HOA meeting. I never attended these things. Too much gossip. Too many complaints about fence heights and mailbox colors. But this time, I arrived early. I sat in the front row. I waited. Karen walked in late. She always did. Power move. She carried a coffee cup that said Boss Lady. She wore her usual smug smile, the kind that made you want to scream. All right, everyone, she said, tapping the table. Let us address the ongoing issue of property aesthetics and fire hazards. Specifically, Mr. Thompson's yard. My blood boiled, but I stayed calm, quiet, waiting for my moment. She continued. Despite repeated warnings, Mr. Thompson continues to store unsafe amounts of wood in plain view. I have documented the violation myself, someone in the back muttered. You document everything. A few people chuckled. Karen ignored them. Effective immediately, the HOA will fine Mr. Thompson $250. I raised my hand. Karen, may I speak? She gave me a patronizing smile. Of course, Tom. Just remember, this is a community meeting, not a debate. I leaned forward. Great, because I am not here to debate. I am here to clarify something. The room went silent. Every eye turned toward me. Karen's smile faltered just slightly. You said you documented my firewood. Correct. Yes, I did. And that documentation is recent. She smirked. I would say within the last 48 hours. I nodded slowly. Interesting, because in those 48 hours, half my firewood was stolen. Karen blinked. Confusion flickered across her face. Well, maybe you misplaced it. I do not misplace 80 pounds of oak. Karen. She opened her mouth, but I kept talking. Funny thing is, I installed cameras after the theft started. And guess who showed up on video? The color drained from her face. You cannot. That is an invasion of privacy. I cut her off. The cameras are on my property facing my woodpile. Perfectly legal. Would you like to see the footage? The crowd erupted into whispers. Someone gasped. The HOA treasurer leaned over, whispering urgently to the vice president. Karen stammered. This is harassment. You are twisting this. No, Karen, I said, leaning back in my chair. I am not twisting anything. You were caught. Red-handed. Or should I say red-heeled? Laughter rippled through the room. Even the normally silent secretary had to cover her mouth. Karen's face turned crimson. You are lying. Want me to play the video? I asked, holding up my phone. I brought it with me. She froze. You could see the panic in her eyes, the calculations, the desperate search for an escape. Finally, she puffed up her chest and hissed, You will regret this. Then she stormed out of the room. The meeting descended into chaos. People talked over each other. Some defended her out of habit. Others laughed in disbelief. The vice president stood and tried to restore order. We will review this matter further, he said, but I could see it in everyone's faces. The tide had turned. People were tired of living in fear. That night, I backed up the footage to 3 different drives. I emailed copies to myself. I was not taking any chances. For a few days, the neighborhood was quiet. No letters. No warnings. No Karen marching past my house with her clipboard. I thought maybe she had learned her lesson, but I should have known better. Karen does not learn. She retaliates. 3 days later, I found another envelope taped to my door. HOA official seal. Inside was a citation for unauthorized security installations, visible from the street. My cameras. I laughed out loud. She was doubling down, tripling down. She would rather burn the whole neighborhood than admit she was wrong. That was when I decided it was time. Time for phase 2. The cameras had done their job. Now it was time to let science take over. I went into my workshop. I turned on the lights. I looked at the wood pile where my 3 hollow logs sat waiting. A slow smile spread across my face. "All right, Karen," I whispered. "Let us make your next fire unforgettable." I checked everything one last time. The powder was stable. The seals were tight. The logs looked perfect, identical to the others. If Karen stole again, and I knew she would take these. And when she burned them well, the results would be poetic. On the 5th night, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app. There she was. Again, flashlight in hand, coat buttoned. Moving through my yard like it was her personal lumber store. I watched as she sorted through the pile. She picked up one of my hollow logs, tested the weight, nodded to herself. Then she loaded it into her SUV along with 2 others. My heart pounded. Not from fear, from anticipation. She had taken all 3, every single one. I watched her drive away, taillights disappearing into the dark. I sat back in my chair, took a deep breath, and waited. The trap was set. The fuse was lit. All that was left was the explosion. The next day, I went about my routine, coffee, emails, a walk through the neighborhood. I passed Karen's house and saw her in the driveway talking to Mrs. Beasley, the HOA treasurer. They were standing beside a shiny new log holder stacked high with firewood. My firewood. I recognized every piece. I smiled and waved. "Morning, ladies. Lovely day." Karen turned. Her tone was clipped. "Good afternoon, Tom." I kept walking, but I could feel her eyes on my back. That night I went to bed early. I was not expecting anything dramatic. Maybe a loud pop, some smoke, a frantic Karen waving a towel at her fireplace. But what happened was so much more. It started at 8:45. I was watching television when I heard a dull boom in the distance. I turned down the volume. Then another boom, louder this time. Then silence, followed by a scream. Oh my God. I stepped onto my porch. Gray smoke rose above the houses. The smell of burnt wood drifted through the air. Neighbors were already gathering. Phones out, voices rising. I walked toward the commotion. My heart raced, but my face stayed calm. Karen's house stood out immediately. Smoke poured from every window. Her chimney billowed like a volcano. The wreath on her front door was half charred. Karen stood in the yard. Hair wild, face covered in soot, silk robe scorched and torn. She was screaming at a firefighter waving her arms. It just exploded. I was burning a few logs and then boom. The firefighter was trying not to smile. "Ma'am, it looks like you had some kind of combustion buildup. Maybe something in the wood caught too fast." Karen blinked. "Are you saying this is my fault?" He shrugged. "Could be a lot of things. Maybe you bought bad wood." "Oh, I did not buy it," she said. Then she stopped, frozen. Realizing what she had just admitted, I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" She glared at me. "I mean, I sourced it locally." "Sourced," I repeated. Interesting word choice. The crowd turned toward me. Whispers spread like wildfire. Karen's face turned red. "I should call the HOA. I think they are already here," I said, nodding, toward Mrs. Beasley, who had just arrived looking absolutely horrified. Karen Beasley whispered, "People are talking." "Did you really?" Karen snapped. "I would never steal." I interrupted softly. "Funny, because I have footage that says otherwise." Karen's jaw dropped. The firefighters exchanged glances. One of them coughed to hide a laugh. At that moment, I felt something shift. Not anger, not revenge, just satisfaction. Like watching a machine complete its function exactly as designed. The neighborhood stood in stunned silence. Then someone in the back started clapping, slowly at first. Then others joined. Within seconds, the whole street erupted in applause. It was over. Karen had destroyed herself. The fire trucks left an hour later. The smoke cleared. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the story spread like wildfire. By morning, the entire neighborhood knew what had happened. The group chat exploded. "Did you hear? Karen's fireplace blew up." I heard it was sabotage. No, it was karma. I sipped my coffee and scrolled through the messages, pretending to be just another concerned neighbor. "Hope everyone is okay," I typed. By noon, a fire inspector arrived. 2 HOA board members came with him, and Karen, still wearing sunglasses and a hat, trying to hide, but everyone was looking. I walked over, casual, coffee in hand. "Morning, Karen." "Rough night." Her head snapped toward me. "This is not funny, Tom. My fireplace exploded." I could have died. "Good thing you did not," I said. "You should be more careful where you get your firewood." She flinched. "What is that supposed to mean?" "Oh, I do not know. Sometimes free wood comes with surprises." The HOA treasurer looked between us nervously. "Are you two implying something?" Karen turned to her. "He is accusing me of something ridiculous. He is obsessed." I laughed. "Obsessed, Karen. You have been sneaking into my yard for weeks." The inspector cleared his throat. "All right, folks, let me explain. I examined the remnants in your fireplace, Mrs. Whitmore. A few logs contained some kind of reactive powder, probably black powder residue." Karen gasped. "Black powder? You mean explosives?" The inspector frowned. "Not in dangerous amounts, more like fireworks material. Small combustion. Nothing serious." Karen turned toward me, her voice shaking. "See, he did this. He planted explosives to kill me." The board members gasped. I stayed calm. "That is a bold accusation, Karen, especially since you admitted the wood came from me." Her mouth opened and closed. No words came out. "Oh, but I can prove it," I said, pulling out my phone. "Remember the cameras? The ones you find me for. Very useful. Want to see?" The crowd leaned in. Even Mrs. Beasley. Karen's voice wavered. "You are bluffing." "Am I?" I tapped the screen. The video played. Karen in my yard. Loading logs. Clear as day. "There you are," I said. Middle of the night. "My property." Quite the community service. Silence. Then a kid in the back burst out laughing. "Mom, that is the lady who yelled at me for riding my bike." The spell broke. People murmured, shook their heads. Some smiled. Karen's face turned a deep red. "This is harassment. You are all witnesses." I cut in smoothly. "On my property with my cameras. You trespassed. Want me to call the sheriff?" She froze. Real fear flashed in her eyes. The inspector spoke carefully. "Mrs. Whitmore, I would advise you to stop talking. The footage is clear." The treasurer sighed. "Karen, this looks really bad." Karen's voice cracked. "You are all turning against me. After everything I have done." I could not resist. "Oh, we appreciate it, Karen, especially you cleaning up my firewood for me." Half the crowd laughed. Even the inspector smiled. She spun toward me, finger jabbing the air. "You will pay for this. I will sue you for harm, sabotage, emotional distress." "Emotional distress," I said. "Was that before or after you trespassed and stole?" A sheriff's car pulled up. Officer Ramirez stepped out. Calm. Professional. I had met him before at community events. "What is going on here?" Karen rushed toward him. "Officer, arrest him. He booby-trapped firewood to hurt me." Ramirez held up a hand. "Slow down one at a time." I handed him my phone. The video paused on a perfect frame. Karen mid-theft under moonlight. "Here's my footage, officer. That is her stealing the logs in question." He watched quietly, then looked at her. "Ma'am, is this you?" Karen swallowed hard. "That is not. You cannot tell." He raised an eyebrow. "It is you, Mrs. Whitmore. Same clothes, same car. Clear as day. This is trespassing and theft." Her face went pale. "You are not, actually." Ramirez sighed. "Look, no one is pressing charges yet, but I am documenting this as a warning. Any further incidents become official." She turned toward me, desperate. "You planned this. You set me up." I shrugged. "I set up cameras." "You set yourself up." The neighbors laughed. Karen's composure shattered. "You are all monsters. You think this is funny? I run this neighborhood." Mrs. Beasley whispered to another board member. "Not anymore, she does not." Karen heard it. That was the final blow. She stormed toward her SUV, got in, slammed the door. The engine roared and she sped off, tires screeching. For a moment, the street stood in silence. Then someone started clapping. Another joined. Within seconds, the entire neighborhood erupted in applause, cheers, relief. It was like waking from a nightmare. Wilson, the vice president, walked over grinning. "Well, Tom, I think you are a local hero." "Hero is a strong word," I said. "I just lit the fuse." He laughed, literally. That night, I sat by my fire pit. Real wood this time. The flames crackled softly. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, no citations. No fear, just calm. I raised my beer toward the fire. To Justice, I whispered. For the next few days, the neighborhood felt different, lighter, like a weight had been lifted. People smiled more, waved more, talked more. The new HOA board under Wilson was fair and transparent. The petty rules were scrapped. The annual fees were lowered. For the first time, Maple Ridge felt like a real community. But Karen was not done. She began a campaign. Handwritten flyers, newsletters, passive-aggressive posts online. She called herself Karen for community safety. She claimed she had been betrayed by a mob led by a dangerous man. She filed complaints with the county, accused the board of corruption and discrimination. The county clerk probably highlighted her name in red, but the neighborhood ignored her. We hosted a barbecue that summer, something Karen had banned for smoke visibility reasons. I was the grill master. The irony was not lost on anyone. Mrs. Beasley came over with lemonade. "You know, I used to be scared of her." I think we all were. "Fear is her fuel," I said. "Take it away and she runs out of gas." Beasley smiled. Well, now she is out of friends too. A week later, Karen planted signs in her yard. Fraudulent HOA vote. Unsafe neighborhood. Thompson's firewood caused injury. She hammered them into the grass like a one-woman protest. I leaned on my fence and called out, "Morning, Karen. Opening an art gallery." She did not look at me. "You think this is funny? You humiliated me." "Funny," I said. "The truth has been pretty loud. You might have missed it under the explosions." Her jaw clenched. "You will regret this." "Already did," I said. "Every time I tried being polite." She stormed inside, slammed the door. By the next day, her signs were gone, removed by the HOA for violating the same obstruction rules she once created. The irony was delicious. Then Wilson brought me an envelope, a cease and desist order. The board had banned Karen from HOA meetings for 6 months. "She is officially not allowed on premises," Wilson said. I raised my eyebrows. That might be the most peaceful 6 months of my life. 2 days later, Karen's water heater burst, flooded her basement. She called the HOA maintenance line, the same line she used to control. She was told politely that she was no longer eligible for assistance. I heard her screaming at the plumber through her door. I will not lie, I enjoyed it. By late summer, a for sale sign appeared in Karen's yard, bright red, freshly painted. Rumor was she found a more civilized community 3 counties away. The day the moving truck arrived, half the neighborhood came outside. People walked dogs, checked mailboxes. No one was subtle. Even Mr. Jenkins brought out a lawn chair. Karen was furious. "You are all vultures," she shouted, as movers loaded furniture. Ungrateful, ignorant, small-minded. Careful, I called from my porch. The last person who said that had trouble with their fireplace. Muffled laughter spread through the crowd. Karen glared at me, climbed into her SUV. As she drove past, she stopped, rolled down the window. "You have not seen the last of me." 2, I raised my beer. "If I do, I will install another camera." She slammed the gas and disappeared. For a moment, the street was silent. Then someone clapped. Another joined. Soon, the whole neighborhood erupted in applause and cheers. It was like being freed from a nightmare. Wilson walked over grinning. "Well, Tom, you are officially a hero." "Hero is a strong word," I said. "I just helped things along." He laughed. With fireworks. From that day forward, Maple Ridge changed. The board became fair. The rules became reasonable. The annual barbecue became tradition. Even the old no decorations rule was scrapped. Come December, the neighborhood lit up like a movie set. I sat by my fire pit most evenings. Sometimes neighbors joined me. We shared drinks and stories. Someone always brought up the great firewood explosion. We laughed until our sides hurt. Sometimes I thought back to the beginning. The stolen logs, the ridiculous fines, the camera footage. Funny how something so small sparked such big change. Maybe that was the lesson. In an HOA, as in life, sometimes the only way to fight nonsense is with well-aimed chaos. I leaned back, watching flames dance against the night. The air was calm, stars bright. For the first time in years, Maple Ridge felt like home. Have you faced something like this? Tell us in the comments. Your story matters. The first autumn after Karen left was the calmest Maple Ridge had seen in years. Lawnmowers hummed peacefully. Kids played without fear of citations. Neighbors talked freely without looking over their shoulders. It felt like the entire community had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. I walked the streets one chilly morning, coffee in hand, watching people string lights for the harvest festival, something Karen would have called a hazard. Now it was celebration. Mrs. Miller waved from her porch. Tom, we are hosting chili night next weekend. You are bringing the wood right. Real wood this time, I promised. She winked. Good. We do not need indoor fireworks. That joke had become neighborhood legend. Even new residents knew the story. They whispered it like folklore. The night Karen's fireplace exploded. Some said it was exaggerated. Others swore it was justice. I never confirmed or denied. A good story needs mystery. Life found rhythm again. My workshop became a gathering place. People dropped by to borrow tools. Ask advice, just talk. I built a bigger fire pit, lined with stone, surrounded by benches. Every weekend we gathered there, families, couples, kids, even Wilson. We roasted marshmallows, grilled steaks, swapped stories, and sometimes someone glanced toward the old corner lot, where Karen's house used to stand. After she left, the house sat empty for months. Realtors came and went. Buyers toured, then left, shaking their heads. Some said it was overpriced. Others said it had bad energy. Eventually, a retired couple bought it. Sweet people. They planted flowers and hosted a welcome brunch. When I brought them firewood, regular wood, the husband smiled. You are the guy from the story, huh? Depends which version you heard. He chuckled. The one where you outsmarted a tyrant with kindling. Sounds about right, I said. He handed me a beer. Good man. Every neighborhood needs someone who stands up. Maybe he was right. Or maybe I just got lucky. Lucky that karma picked me as the delivery driver. A few weeks later, I was in my workshop when a voice startled me. Still playing with fire, I see. I turned. Karen. She stood by the gate, arms crossed, sunglasses and scarf like a courtroom drama character. Her hair was darker, cut shorter, but that posture, that mix of pride and resentment, unchanged. I wiped my hands. Well, I will be damned. The ghost returns. She stepped closer. I came for my things, your things. You sold the house. She hesitated. Decorations in the shed. New owners said I could pick them up. I studied her. No fire in her eyes now, just exhaustion. She looked smaller. Like the years caught up? All right, shed is around back, but I am coming with you. Would not want you taking the wrong firewood again. That earned a faint smirk. We walked in silence. She glanced around. You made the place nicer, thanks. Easier, when no one threatens to fine you for existing. She sighed. I was not trying to be cruel, Tom. I wanted order, control. Yeah, I said softly. That was the problem. People are not meant to live under control. Not like that. She opened the shed, took out a dusty box, stared at it. You made me the joke of this town, she said quietly. Do you know how humiliating that was? I looked her in the eye. Karen, you did that to yourself. I just held up the mirror. For a moment, she looked ready to argue. Then her shoulders dropped. She nodded. Maybe you are right. When she turned to leave, she paused. You know they call me HOA Karen online now. Someone made a meme. Internet is undefeated, I said. She did not smile. Take care, Tom. And just like that, she walked away. No threats. No yelling, no drama. For the first time, Karen left quietly. I stood there staring at the empty street. Wind rustled through the trees. Scent of pine and ash in the air. I felt something. Not pity, closure, because Karen was not just a villain. She was a warning of what happens when control becomes obsession, when pride blinds you to decency. That night we gathered around the fire pit again. Flames flickered against smiling faces, faces that once avoided eye contact for fear of fines. Wilson raised his glass, to peace, and to the man who reminded us standing up never goes out of style. Everyone cheered. Someone shouted to Tom and the firewood incident. I laughed, lifting my bottle. To Karen, may her next neighborhood have better insurance. The circle burst into laughter. As the fire crackled, I leaned back. watched sparks drift into the sky like tiny stars, wild, bright, untamed. I realized something. Revenge was never the point. It was about balance, reminding people that respect taken for granted will eventually demand restoration, sometimes through words, sometimes through fire. When I finally went inside, I glanced at the glowing embers. They pulsed gently, peaceful, alive. For the first time since moving to Maple Ridge, I felt truly home. In life, there is a fine line between order and control. Cross it and even good intentions turn toxic. Karen thought she was protecting the community, but she was suffocating it. Her downfall was not caused by firewood or fireworks. It was caused by arrogance, by believing she was untouchable. Maybe that is why stories like this matter. We have all met a Karen, someone who uses power to belittle, who mistakes control for leadership. But when truth and patience meet, that ego justice shows. Up, loud, messy, poetic. Here is the lesson. Respect goes both ways. Treat people fairly. Mind your own yard. Do not steal what is not yours, literal or metaphorical. What would you have done? Your thoughts matter. Behind the Hedges brings you stories like this because they are real. They are raw. They remind us that standing up,